Good evening, folks. Welcome to Ridgecrest Talk. I'm Al Huey, along with my partner, Robert Eierman. And our special guest, again, is Mr. Don Zdeba from the Indian Wells Valley Water District. Thanks for joining us,
Thanks
Don.
for coming in again.
So you're getting to be a regular here, it looks like.
I think I'm a 10-timer now.
Yeah, okay.
Well, you know, it's because of the issue over water here.
Sure.
So we got to keep the people updated and tell us what's going on.
I appreciate that.
How are we doing as far as our conservation and relationship with the state and so forth?
Well, as of March 1st, we had our conservation target reduced from 36% to 32%. That 4% adjustment was based on climate, and we got the maximum adjustment of 4%. So we are at a cumulative since last June of just under 24%. The one kind of disheartening thing, February we had a great month. We did almost 34% conservation, which is great. We followed that up with under 12% in March. And
Do
I have
you
to
have
think,
any thought as to why that occurred?
I suspect February was really the first month that Ordinance 100, which was passed about mid-January, was in effect, which reduced watering from 3 days per week to 1 day per week.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we got the message out, and most people complied, went down to 1 day a week watering. So I think that's why we saw the 33% or almost 34% in February. Now in March, we figured March is a transitional month, and you'll remember we did have a really warm week in March. So
Yes.
what we decided to do for March was allow people some discretion to water anywhere from 1 to 3 days per week, depending on the weather. And of course, they had to adhere to the schedule of their assigned days.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we saw people probably, especially that week when it was quite warm, maybe even running their coolers. So you know, I don't know for sure, but I suspect that probably was one of the factors in the poor performance, if you will. I think that was the lowest conservation rate we've had since we've been tracking this last June, just under 12%. So, be interesting to see what April looks like. You know, one thing that still is surprising to me, it'll be almost a year that we've been under the mandatory conservation order, and we still find people, you know, not watering on the right days or not watering at the right time. And again, it's a little bit disheartening because I think we've done, it's either we haven't done a good job of communicating it or people just are disregarding it. I like to think that we've done a good job of communicating, and I would also like to think that people aren't necessarily ignoring it.
So
willfully.
what is it right now? Here we are, end of April. We're still on the even odd.
We are on the even odd. April through October is your 3 day a week, which we go back to the schedule of if you're even address, it's Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. If you're not address, it's Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. No watering on Monday. And we still find people watering on Mondays.
And no watering between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m.
Good point. 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. Right, correct. And we still have found people doing that even within the last week. So again, we like to get that word out. You know, I think we had 73 water waste reports in March. I'm not sure where we are so far in April, but you know, that's an indication that there's still people that either haven't gotten the message or they're choosing to ignore the message. But
And you say usually they comply, that once they, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know, or I forgot.
Once we give them
whatever.
that first notice and bring to light what the issue is, whether it's watering outside the hours or watering on the wrong day, people mostly comply. We have very few repeats. I think we only had either 3 or 4 formal letters had to be issued last month, and that would be those are people that are repeating the same issue.
You know, and my personal opinion is I think that human nature kicks in, and people have certainly seen a lot of rain of late, and through the winter months. And so they maybe make the false assumption that, well, this is all over. I'm not saying that you haven't done a good job of informing. I'm just saying that people have a tendency to look to the positive and say, well, probably this is not meaningful anymore. And you have the human nature of, they're just tired of it.
I think your point is well taken. It's especially true in Northern California. I was just reading something this morning where some private communities, if you will, are kind of fighting back against the state, especially in Northern California, where they have had a good El Nino. And
Yes.
there, in fact, are 3 reservoirs, Shasta, Oroville, and Folsom, that maybe you've heard are full, and they're actually letting water loose out of those reservoirs for fear of flooding. So up in that area, they're saying, you know, the credibility of the state is affected if you keep pushing these conservation rates when we're letting water out of reservoirs.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the Northern California and Southern California are distinctly different. We
Yes.
didn't get the El Nino that was
Correct.
forecasted for us. So, as a matter of fact, maybe you're aware that the state board had a public hearing April 20th to take comments on what should be conservation orders or mandates going forward. And I think they've changed the date to May 18th, I believe, where they're expected to come out with recommendations now for perhaps relaxing in some areas those conservation targets. And I personally believe they're going to relax them in Northern California. I think you're going to see some conservation targets either reduced or maybe even eliminated in some areas. I think they're going to go geographically by what the situation is specifically in that area. And since we didn't get a lot of impact from El Nino, I'm anticipating we're probably going to stay at our 32%.
Do you think that it's reasonable when they made this climate adjustment to only give us a 4% adjustment?
Personally, no, I don't. I think that I shouldn't say deserve, but I think the reality is that the climate is a big factor here. And as I've mentioned before in previous appearances, the evaporative cooler use is very significant, and we
Yes.
still haven't received, despite several letters to them, several emails to them, we still haven't received acknowledgement that that is a significant amount of our water use during the summer here. So,
Yeah. And that leads to this lack of credibility, in my opinion, as far as the people's feeling about what the state is doing.
Mm-hmm.
And just to show you, I won't get it in, so I'll save it for when we come back, but I want to tell you a story of talking with somebody that isn't from this area and that doesn't understand coolers, and just to show you how significant it is.
And we'll talk about that
Yeah,
when we
after
come back from our break right now. Listen to them and join us on the other side.
And welcome back to segment 2 of Ridgecrest Talk this evening. I'm Robert Eierman, along with my partner Al Huey, and our special guest this evening, a rare guest, no I'm teasing, Mr. Don Zdeba, General Manager of the Indian Wells Valley Water District. And before we left, I wanted to tell you a quick story. Yesterday I was up on the roof of one of the rental homes that we care for a friend, and I got a phone call from Los Angeles, person down there, and I said, "Oh man, I'm up on the roof doing coolers," and he had no concept of what I was referring to, and he said, "Why are you up on the roof loading coolers with beer?" And I had to explain to him that that's how we cool our homes here.
I don't use beer.
coolers of beer?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't use beer either, but my point is that that was so unfamiliar to them, to him, that just no concept. And in my opinion, a lot of people that may be on the California Water Resources Board and making these decisions have no concept. And I understand that you have told them, but they're not assimilating it, in my opinion.
and I would agree with you on that assessment, yeah.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And that's why, I go 4%. Hoop-de-doo. Let's be realistic here
Yeah.
of what it takes to provide cooling for us.
Yeah, we've talked before, I know you gentlemen are aware of it, the fact that, there was a 20% reduction from 2007 to 2014, so.
Right.
When it wasn't mandated, we did that on our own.
Exactly, and with this 36% on top of that, effectively 50% we're being asked to cut back, which is very hard to do. And maybe you can do that one year, but to sustain that from year to year, if these restrictions stay in place, I think it's very unreasonable and unrealistic to expect.
But it's like talking to the wall, huh? They don't account for that 20% we already did beforehand?
Well, no, they don't. Certainly, they do not take that into consideration. And we're not unique in that respect, because I know that argument has been made by other districts as well, other agencies. But, you know, that's, again, when this was all done last year, it all had to be done relatively quickly. You know, the governor came out with a 25% requirement, and the state board had to come up with something on short order. I think they did what they could, but they've had time to, I think, to refine it.
And then there's a difference between the people in LA, how they're getting their water.
Correct.
And us here drawing it from the basin.
Absolutely.
I mean, we don't get replenished.
We have no surface water sources,
Yeah.
Right.
as many other areas in California do, or alternative sources. We have one source, groundwater, and that's it. So.
And they don't make any distinction between the two. They just
No.
Yeah.
everybody.
Right.
And you have differing opinions. How long does the water that does come into the basin, coming down from the mountains and so on and so forth, how long does it take for that water to reach our basin? And some people say right away, some people say hundreds of years, some people say thousands of years, some people say hundreds of thousands of years. So we really don't know how long it takes. And the one other point I wanted to make, you know,
There is a way to get that data, though.
Well,
They can put,
there are isotope
Yeah.
studies that you can do.
It can be
And-
done.
and
I'm just saying that at
but it
this
has
point,
not been done yet.
There has been some studies done, and I think, and you probably heard people mention this before, that some of the water that we are mining, if you will, is of the Pleistocene age, 20,000 years or more,
Right.
based on isotope geochemical analysis. So
Yes.
it's not, when you say the water comes off the mountains right away, and that's not.
Yeah, it comes down, but how
We
long
don't-
does it take to get down there?
It doesn't go in there instantaneously, I
Right.
guarantee you.
It isn't like we put a big hole there and it just goes bloop right in there.
Right.
The
And then
other,
the question of how much water we have left. It was a big, big, big discussion
yes.
during the rezoning process by the county. And I've even heard others here in the city make remarks that, you know, we may only have 2 or 3 years of water left. But that's not true.
No, and I've said before on this show, as a matter of fact, that, you know, we're not in any danger of running out of water real soon. But what you
Yeah, real soon is a relatively term.
Well, what you need to be concerned about is the trend that you see. And we know that there's water to depth. Is it all good water? Probably not. I mean, at some point you have to treat that water, which is going to be expensive. And at some point the water level is going to decline, and as you get lower...
And that would depend on where the well is drilled, right?
Absolutely, but even on the
Because
southwest...
there are some wells that are deep wells that I know of that the water at 1,000 feet is very potable.
Right, the Southwest well field where the water district does a lot of, about a quarter of its pumping, 25% of its pumping is the highest quality in the basin. Contrast that to Neal Ranch, the property that we sold or traded with the Mojave Pistachio people. The water quality up there was not very good. It was brackish water essentially. So depending on where you are within the basin, yeah, there's water, but is it the best quality and water that doesn't have to be treated? Depends again on where you are within the basin. But there is water to depth, and as I said, we're not in danger of running out of water anytime real soon. But what personally I would be concerned about is the trend that you see, and the fact that, you know, to some people's point, that there are some wells that aren't declining as quickly as others. But if you look at hydrographs throughout the basin that the Kern County Water Agency has been measuring for years and years, the trend is, and you'll see mostly wells declining, probably on the order of, I think, 80% plus are either declining
You're
slowly.
talking private wells or the
These are
district wells?
private, just the wells that the Kern County Water Agency monitors, which are mostly private wells, but they're also, there are monitor wells that were drilled by the Bureau of Recreation, Bureau Rec. Several wells that I think of the water district wells are some of them they monitor, or we report the information to them. But generally, again, you can look at the Kern County Water Agency information, the hydrographs, and most of them are in decline. So that it's that trend that you should be concerned about. And as you gentlemen, I'm sure, realize that anything that gets done doesn't get done overnight.
Oh, sure.
It's going to take years, probably decades, to implement solutions that we need to implement. It's not going to be done in a year or 2 or 3 years.
Right.
So the
But
fact
we
that
got
you
to
have
take a
this-
break here.
Yeah, and when we come
unfortunately.
back, I want to talk about the definition, what I consider to be the unreasonable definition of sustainability.
We'll do that. Join us on the other side. Welcome back to our last segment here on Ridgecrest Talk. We're talking with Mr. Don Zdeba, District Manager for the Water District here. And we're obviously talking about water. We had a special meeting here recently, ad hoc meeting, public meeting with Department of Water Resources. And they had some pretty strong language on what kind of power they would have. But that was primarily, if I'm not mistaken, if we didn't get this water situation under control here.
Correct. I think the strong language you're referring to came more from the State Water Resources Control Board than the Department of Water Resources.
Okay.
Remember, they said that they were the backstop, if you will.
Yes.
If
So they said.
if the locals didn't develop a groundwater sustainability agency, and that groundwater sustainability agency didn't develop a groundwater sustainability plan, and that plan did not meet the goal, if you will, of sustainability, or was deemed to be ineffective or inefficient, then the backstop would kick in, that being the State Water Resources Control Board. And as they stated at that meeting, they're not familiar with the basins that they would be coming into. They have only certain actions they could take, and I think the one hammer that they put out there was the first thing they would do is just order cutbacks on water producers. And that would be the main tool that they could implement. So to your point, I mean, yeah, that came across rather heavy-handed, but that's, you know, reality of what they would do. They're not familiar with, you know, local basins and what might be considered local solutions to the issues. So that's, you know, cutting back is the easiest thing to do. Well, it's not easy, but
Let me
Now,
talk
to
about
your question.
the key word here, sustainability. You know, when they say that sustainability is that you don't take out any more water than you get back in, that's a pretty narrow definition of sustainability, and it's one that takes no impact or no effect in of how much water do you have, how deep is this bathtub, and what are we drawing out of the bathtub. If the bathtub with our current rate of usage would last 200 years, just to pick a number, no meaning to it, then you have a long-term problem. But if you're going to be in trouble in 10 years, that's an immediate problem. If you're going to be 500 years, you know, again, it's kind of to me like describing New York City in 1880 and saying that we have a horse manure sustainability problem, and saying we've got to do something about where we're going to put all the horse manure, and we need to develop plans so that we can sustain that. Well, all of that got overrun by technology. So they could have made their 50-year plan, and it would have all been useless, and everybody wasted their time, money, and effort. In the same concept, there may be technology on the horizon that makes this problem somewhat go away. Maybe someone will create a way to do desalination in a very economical way. And then none of this is meaningful, because all you got to do is pump it from your magnanimous desalination plant. So all I'm saying is that it seems to me that they've made a far bigger deal out of this by not addressing the time frame involved. I mean, if you just make a decision, okay, sustainability is same in, same out, you really haven't taken everything that's important into consideration. And it just feels like tyrannical government doing it again. That's just my opinion.
Your analogy is interesting. But personally, I think you have to look at what is reality today and not assume technologies that are going to be developed.
Well, we got a horse manure problem we got to solve. Don't take technology into account. My point is
no,
that
your point,
how can you forecast that technology won't solve the problem for us?
I mean, you're taking the position like we just spoke earlier that we only got like 5 or 6 years of water left. We got to get this fixed now.
Oh, I'm not taking that position. There's more than 5 or 6 years of water.
How many years?
Did you hear that, Stu Fields?
Well, yeah, I mean, the reality
10?
is, what's that?
10?
I think we're safe for 10. I think we're safe for a while. But again,
Can't pin him down.
I can't give you an exact year we're going to run out of water or we're going to be into...
Well, reasonable. We got 100 years of water?
There's
At
water,
the rate we're using it now?
There's water to depth, which is, as you said, like 1,000 feet, or more even. I think there's been some deep wells drilled. But again, this the quality of the water, the technology available to pump that water at 2,000 feet, 3,000 feet, the cost of the water to pump it at that
Right,
depth.
the cost would go up.
That's significant. So we want to...
And the cost of the GSA isn't significant?
It likely will be. Yeah.
So it seems to me like we're mandating costs to prevent costs that might be there. Sounds like a lose-lose to me. Just my opinion.
Well, as one of my coworkers, JT, would say, it is what it is.
Yes, that's true also.
No, we're in uncharted territory with this Groundwater Sustainability Agency and Sigma, trying to make it, take it step by step. And obviously, there's disagreements on how it should be done or who should be involved. But I think, I think we're making good progress, and I think it'll all work out in the end.
How about if we elect new assemblymen and senators within the state of California, and we could handle this like Obamacare, just...
Well, that's certainly one solution, I suppose. But
I'd rather go at it like Bernie Sanders.
Oh.
Everybody gets free water.
Yeah, that's true. Free college education, free water,
Right.
free power, free gas. I'm all for it.
We need to get him to come and run as governor here.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well, we appreciate you taking the time to come out and talk to us again.
Absolutely.
We'll hit you up, obviously, again in a month or so, find out where we are and what we're doing, and I'm sure there'll be more information coming down the pike.
And for everybody out there, please help do your part. It's clearly important that we do everything we can to conserve everything we can in a very reasonable fashion.
And again, remember the watering days. If your address is an even number, you water on
Tuesday, Thursday,
Saturday.
Odd number, Wednesday, Friday,
Anytime
Sunday.
during the day. No. From 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., no watering.
Correct.
And no watering on Mondays.
And no watering
on Mondays.
Right.
And if you're an odd address, it's Wednesday, Friday, Sunday.
Right.
Correct.
So,
And
if you got any questions, if you're confused, call the Water District and they'll straighten you out. And if you got any issues, they're more than willing to come out and help you.
Absolutely.
That's right. So
absolutely.
use that resource.
We have a wonderful staff.
They're here to
and
help,
more than
not
one
to hurt.
All right. All right, folks, have a good evening. We'll see you next week.